Abortion rights advocates are celebrating the ruling, but preparing for a longer fight. I want to bring in Michelle Velasquez now. She is Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin's Chief Strategy Officer. Michelle, appreciate you taking a few minutes to be with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Michelle, let's start with this. When will services resume in Sheboygan County?
Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin's priority right now is to resume services in Sheboygan. That is something that is, again, the number one priority and is being worked on as we speak. I don't really have a time frame, unfortunately, for folks, but as soon as possible, we will get those services up and running. I do think it's really worth noting the sort of additional layered challenge involved in providing medication abortion services in Sheboygan. As folks, maybe that don't know, prior to Dobbs, Sheboygan Health Center provided medication abortion, only no procedural abortions there. And Wisconsin law requires that all patients receiving abortions have 2 visits with the physician. And for medication abortion specifically, patients must see the same physician over the course of those 2 visits. So it really adds a sort of complexity in terms of scheduling and ensuring that the patient sees the same physician on both days as the law requires.
Michelle, do you think that, should the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, if it gets the case, if it upholds the Dane County judge's ruling, does that answer the issue of whether Wisconsin's Constitution does allow abortion?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. It doesn't. So the case before the Dane County Circuit Court that may make its way up really focuses on a question of statutory interpretation. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin is, of course, thrilled with this ruling. We resumed services back in September. We know how meaningful this ruling is for providers and health systems and patients around the state, just to offer that confidence and reassurance that physicians can treat their patients without fear of prosecution. But unfortunately, this case isn't going to answer the ultimate question of constitutionality. It's an absolutely vital and critical case for restoring, and there's still a need to evolve Wisconsin law to answer these questions about constitutionality.
With that in mind, Michelle, what other strategies is Planned Parenthood exploring to secure long-term access to abortion in Wisconsin?
So, Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is always thinking about how to secure and protect access. And so we work really closely with other stakeholders, with outside counsel. We pay attention to what's going on in the national landscape as well, and how some cases in federal courts and in other states may impact Wisconsin, or may serve as sort of a template for some of the arguments that could be made here in Wisconsin. So there's really it's always a work in progress. We absolutely operate under the legal structure that we have, so we do the best that we can to provide as much access to folks as we can within the legal framework here in Wisconsin, but we know that it's not enough. So our work will continue every day to make sure that people are able to get the health care they need when they need it.
At this point, does a long-term strategy likely doesn't include the legislature, as the Republican-controlled legislature would likely not, codify access to abortion, and laws can change with future legislatures. So what are some specific options that are available?
So, there have always been 2 paths to protecting abortion. For example, as you just mentioned, the state legislature could absolutely act. They could listen to the constituents in this state who overwhelmingly support access to abortion, and codify a statutory right. However, as you noted, sometimes laws get repealed as there are changes in the makeup of the legislature. But nonetheless, there is a legislative path in theory. And then, of course, there's a legal path. And so we see that, we've seen the first case get filed in the days following the Dobbs decision. The Attorney General filed that, and then 3 physicians intervened as well. And so the legal path is sort of the most likely path in the moment. But it's, again, not always the most protective either. There are Supreme Courts can overrule themselves. We've seen that done, obviously, with Roe being overturned. Iowa previously had a state constitutional protection that was overturned last year in 2022. And so when I say that this is, again, a marathon and not a sprint, those are some of the things I'm talking about.
Michelle Velasquez, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin's Chief Strategy Officer. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.